Good evening, everyone. Best wishes of Dashara. And I'm happy to see that we have about 50 people already joining in, and as the audience kind of trickles in, it's a pleasure to have you here on the Guru Manthan platform. Week after week, we had started this on 1st of August, and every Saturday we have been able to invite educationists, thinkers, discuss about various models and ideas in the space of education. The Guru Manthan series of lectures is actually being organized by WILEAD, or the Vivekananda Institute for Leadership Development. WILEAD mission is to develop human and social capital for nation building, to basically enhance the potential of individuals and institutions across the development sector. Under WILEAD, we do engage with 4 partners, 4 sectors: the government, the NGOs, corporates, and the community, especially the youth. One of the flagship programs of WILEAD has been the Guru Manthan. This year, it has been a series of lectures. It's planned to be 50 lectures on every Saturday, starting from the 1st of August. Over the 50 lectures, we intend to create a platform for teachers to share, discuss, debate, and learn diverse perspectives and practices in the field of education. Now, so far, we have had several luminaries in the field of education with us. We have had Professor M.K. Sridhar. We have had Mr. Anurag Beher, Sir T.S. Krishnamurthy. Then we have, on Teachers' Day, we have had Dr. Kasturi Rangan address all the teachers. Mr. Anil Swarup was formerly the Secretary of the MHRD, Ministry of Education, as we now call it. And in this month, we have last week we have had Professor Annamalai talk about the importance of language in education. Today we have a very interesting topic, that is the model of the Kalkeri Sangeet Vidyalaya. For people who might have visited this place, it's a very serene settings. The Kalkeri Sangeet Vidyalaya was started in 2002, runs a formal school along with a music school. So in the mornings, the first half of the day is a music school, music and dance school for the underprivileged kids. And from about 11 a.m. onwards, it becomes a formal state board school. So with us today, here we have Mr. Adam Woodward. He is the director of the KSV, the Kalkeri Sangeet Vidyalaya. And like all these lectures so far, we will be having a 20-25 minute lecture where Adam would be sharing his experiences, the lessons which KSV has learned from an art integrated curriculum, followed by a Q&A session for about 30 minutes. And then we will have the closing remarks and we'll try to end it by around 8 p.m. You can drop in your questions in the chat box, and between me and Ramesh, we will be able to pick them up. Over to you, Adam, and it is a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you for welcoming me, and I'm very grateful to accept your invitation to this platform and to be able to share with everybody a little bit about the model of KSV. So I'd like to do that in a short time of 15 to 20 minutes in a very kind of a brief format, and I look much more to getting involved in the kind of the nitty-gritty of the questions and answers. I think this is a bit more free-flowing. So to start things off, I think I would just like everybody to do a very quick visualization exercise where we can bring a picture into our mind's eye of a slightly different world. This is a world where there is no discrimination. We're not discriminating upon gender or ethnicity or nationality, religion, caste, creed. There's no bias. There's equal opportunities. It makes no difference whether you would be the daughter of a prominent politician or the daughter of a daily wage laborer. When it comes to education, you would have equal opportunities. When it comes to healthcare, you would have equal opportunities. When it comes to entering the employment market, you would have equal opportunities. This is somewhat of a, well, not somewhat, it is very much a utopian vision of the world. And if we come out of that vision that we just created and bring ourselves back to the real world, the reality that we all live in today, we find that it's something that is vastly different from what we just thought about. It's something that is in fact probably the opposite of what we thought about, where there is a vast amount of discrimination, there is a vast amount of inequality, there's a vast amount of bias, and there is a massive lack of opportunity for very large segments of society. And I don't just mean this is a challenge that is particular to India. This is something that is around the world in each and every country, that there is different layers and strata of society. And if you happen to be somewhere near the top of this pyramid, the opportunities that are available to you are much more. And those at the bottom, the opportunities are much less. So when we look at Kalkeri Sangeet Vidyalaya, you can take a top-down look at this and we can say that it's an NGO, it's a society, it's an academic school, it's a music school, it's a residential school, it's a community, it's an extended family. But really what is underpinning all of these things and what it is, the essence of what we're doing is that we're trying to level the playing field. We're trying to provide opportunities to the socially disadvantaged, the economically disadvantaged, those that are discriminated against, those that are downtrodden. Try to break this cycle of persistent poverty by providing opportunity. This is what is missing for many, many millions of children around the world, opportunity. Life is kind of just a series of choices that we make. We make the choices, we live with the consequences, be they positive or be they negative. Many things we can choose, but there are certain things that we can't choose. Of course, one of the things that we cannot choose is the circumstances of our birth. We might be born as the daughter of the prominent politician or the daughter of the daily wage laborer. We don't have any choice in this. But the circumstances of our birth dictate the opportunities that will be available to us in our education and later on in life. We firmly believe that it is the fundamental right for all children to have access to an equal education, for all children to have access to equal healthcare opportunities, to have access to nutritious food, to have access to participate in their community's cultural life. So, by providing opportunities to children from socially and economically disadvantaged backgrounds, we aim to empower them to succeed in their education and thereby go on to create good, positive livelihoods, employment with dignity, and break the cycle of persistent poverty. So how do we go about doing this? Kalkeri Sangeet Vidyalaya is something that has its feet in two very different worlds. One foot is in the past, where we're teaching the ancient discipline of Indian classical arts, Hindustani classical music alongside Kathak dance. And the other foot is firmly planted in the modern world, where we're teaching a modern educational curriculum and doing our best to integrate that with technology. It's an intensive program of the performing arts alongside academic subjects. basically an arts integrated curriculum. We are, as I mentioned, a residential school. We are very lucky to be in a very serene environment, as Praveen mentioned. And this is something that goes a long way towards creating a very positive atmosphere for children to learn, in order to practice music, in order to do their academic studies, where there is minimal distraction from the outside world. It has its advantages and the disadvantages of being isolated in this way, but I feel that the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages. So usually children spend 10 months a year with us on campus, unless there's a global pandemic, which kind of changes the scenario a little bit. We're in this very rural location. We put a big emphasis upon the environment also, that we teach the children about respecting and the environment. Our campus is run on renewable energy, so primarily solar. And as I say, we're teaching two aspects. One is the arts curriculum, and one is the academic curriculum. So along the art side, it's primarily Hindustani classical music, and the children have the opportunity to learn vocal, tabla, sitar, alongside Kathak dance and drama classes. And then on the academic side of things, we are teaching the state syllabus in Kannada medium. We believe it's very important that students, children, they learn in their mother tongue. We teach in their mother tongue Kannada right up until the 10th standard, but at least up until the 8th standard, children should be learning in their mother tongue. In the last decade or more, there's been this kind of popular rush towards private schools, English medium private schools, where everybody's thinking that if your child is learning in English medium, that all your prayers will be answered, and your child is destined for success. It's not necessarily so. Of course, learning English is probably essential in this world where it's one of the most widely spoken languages in the world. So of course it has its advantages, but at the same time, and especially when you're dealing with families that have not had great access to education in the past, their children might be first generation learners, so there's not been a great deal of learning that's happened in the home from the parents, from the extended family, before the child enters into the school at around 6 years old. So, this is one of the challenges that we face on that side of things, that 80% of the children coming to KSV are first generation learners. And a lot of the learning that should have taken place up until the age of 6 years has not happened. So it means right from the beginning, we're kind of playing catch up, and it takes a little time to get to the right level. So if you to add into that mix that child is expected to enter into this learning environment and study in a foreign language, English, that makes it more or less impossible. So mother tongue learning for primary children, essential. So we're teaching Kannada medium, we're teaching the following the Karnataka state syllabus. So there's the 6 primary subjects, Kannada, 2 languages, math, science, social studies. Our aim really is to create this environment that is free of fear, somewhere that is safe, where the children feel safe, the children feel secure, the children feel valued, the children feel loved, the children feel listened to. All these things move us towards creating this environment that is conducive to learning, that opens the children up to the learning process, and is not school is something to be enjoyed, and the environment is something to be enjoyed, and it's a place to come and have fun while you're learning also, not somewhere where you don't want to go there, you're trying to get out of going there, you're trying to find excuses why not to do this, why not to do that, instead of being open to this process. So it's really about creating this extended family environment. And at the beginning, many years ago, when the numbers of admission, the number of children was much smaller, this was very much easy to do. And as time has gone on and numbers have increased, it is something that has become a little bit more challenging, but we're finding ways to maintain this very tight-knit community. So as Praveen mentioned, we were founded in 2002, and the school was founded by individuals that shared passions. They shared a passion for the Indian classical arts, and they shared a passion for positive social change. So the essence was how to amalgamate these two things, bring them together to bring about positive social change through the arts. And this was the kind of the brainchild behind KSV. We currently have around 220 students. It's pretty much a 50% ratio between boys and girls. There's around 2/3 of the students are in the mainstream of 1st to 10th standard. And then the further around 70 students, they're in, the let's say the higher education. We can say 11 and 12 is part of the secondary, but for the sake of discussion, we'll say 11th and beyond is higher education, because that is taking place outside of our campus. So we do continue to support the students right from 6 years old up until they choose to cease education, whether that is after their PUC or whether that is after their undergraduate degree or their postgraduate degree. Or we've just had our first student who is actually a member of staff. This individual has actually just been accepted for his a PhD seat in Karnataka University. So we'll be the first KSV alumni to get enrolled in the PhD course. So yeah, we support the students into college. We support the students financially. We support the students through mentorship up until whatever point they decide they would like to cease their education and enter the employment market. The music classes happen for around 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. So Monday to Friday, every morning, 8:30 till around 11 o'clock, music classes are running. When the children enter the school in the 1st standard, for the first 4 years that they're in the school, during this music class time, they'll be in activities that we call elementary classes. So an aspect of the elementary classes is Hindustani vocal, and this is their gateway into the arts. And then alongside that, there's activity-based learning and education through games, arts and crafts, these kind of things. It's quite a dynamic session, short dynamic sessions. So their interest is kind of maintained over a period of time, nothing too long-term and demanding for them. And then once children enter into the 5th standard, they then make a choice. So they can choose any 2 of the disciplines that we offer. So vocal, tabla, sitar, Kathak dance and drama. One will be their major subject and the other will be their minor subject. And then these classes are covered Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 11 o'clock. There is, of course, before all of this starts, early morning music practice. There's also the opportunity for students to take part in yoga sessions. We have a collective group meditation every morning before breakfast. Once the music classes are over at around 11, we switch over to academic subjects. There's one longer class before lunch, and then there's 4 classes after lunch. We finish around just before 5 o'clock. There's a bit of free time for the students. And in the evening, we have things like activity clubs. There's further music practice. opportunity for reading and library time. We like to bolster the syllabus with computer classes, art, sports and games. Excuse me. So one of the facets of our organization that I would like to share with you is, if you've been on our website or social media somewhere, you'll see the tagline under our logo that we say, we're a school with a difference. So a couple of differences I would just like to point out. One of the primary difference for me that is essential in everything that we do is really the foundation of what's happening. When you consider most schools, educational institutions, hostels, all these kind of places, even homes, many of these places are very authoritarian. There's a high level of discipline. And attached to that discipline is then a whole range of punishments that can be inflicted upon you in case you, step outside what is considered, what are the boundaries of this discipline policy that's imposed. And quite often, it's very sad to say that children are victims of violence inside the classroom. The children's a victim of violence inside the home. And this can be physical violence, this can be psychological violence. This is really an unacceptable state of affairs. And this is something that we address on a very serious matter, having a zero tolerance policy towards violence, creating this environment that is free of fear. And as I mentioned before, it has to be there. If it's not there, you'll just face resistance from the child. The child is just not open to the learning process, is not open to the learning environment, is not open to the teachers, whoever it might be. So really underpinning everything is this. And I wish I could say that this is not a difference. I'm sure there's many schools out there that are following the same pattern as us, but there are many schools also that do not follow, that they tolerate the teacher. There's, even if it's the clip around their head, the ruler on the back of their hand, or shouting at the child in the class, humiliating them in front of their friends. This can be really damaging for a child. And so I wish that this wasn't a difference. I just wish that this was just normal across the board. But it's somewhat sad to say that this is a difference. So that would be one difference. Another difference from our point of view is that we don't have any homework. So most schools have homework. Most schools, they send the students home with, lots of homework they're expected to do when they get home. And parents always on at them, have you done your homework? Have you done your homework? And it's always something that is, again, there's resistance. Because, most, not all children, but most children, they probably rather not do homework when they get home. They'd rather go out and play and, be creative and spend time with their friends and, do normal things. I can remember also as a child, my mother always on at me, have you done your homework? Have you done your homework? And so when we started, we had this model of homework, even though it's work in the hostel after the classes. So we had this model. But we realized that, yes, there's this resistance, that you're having to kind of always be behind the students to make sure that they're working, make sure that they're doing. And because the students who are involved in this activity, they're not 100% invested in that activity, the outcome is less. So we decided to turn that on its head, get rid of the homework, find activities where learning can be brought about through activities. And it's activities that the students, the children, they choose to do themselves. So because they've chosen to be involved in that activity, they're much more engaged in that activity. The learning outcome is much greater. So getting rid of homework, involving in activity clubs is one difference. Also that it's becoming more and more popular these days, I guess, but we don't have any examinations, and it's been like that for us for quite a while. So up until 11th standard, there is no exams. We just work on a system of continuous evaluation. At the start of the year, we have a series of learning outcomes that are expected to be met by the students, the teachers, primarily through observation, ensuring that each child is up to the required level for each learning outcome. If there's a slight deviation in that, then we have two basic remedial actions are there. The first being peer-to-peer learning. So this is something that I see is in the national education policy, the idea of bringing more peer-to-peer learning into the school environment. It's something we've been doing for many years, and we find it to be very effective for both parties. So, for instance, if we have a child in the 5th standard who is struggling with one of their language classes, we would identify another child 2 standards above who is, very competent in this subject, and then that child would teach the one that is struggling, and it works for both parties. The one that's struggling gets more one-on-one attention, and one of the best ways to learn something is to teach it. So the one that is already competent is also building their skill in that particular subject. So peer-to-peer learning would be the first step. If the child is really struggling, which doesn't come about too often, then we would arrange some more one-on-one time with the appropriate teacher. We wait till the child is at the right level for this particular learning outcome, and then they're back in to the mainstream. The peer-to-peer learning and the remedial with the teachers, this is all happening in the morning. We take them out of their arts, performing arts sessions for about half an hour or 1 hour. And so it's not affecting the academic classes. And I guess the final point about being a school with a difference is that we don't charge any fees. Everything is free. We're providing a free service to the students of Kalkeri Sangeet Vidyalaya. So we're not, it's one of the great failings of the education system in the modern world, around the world, is that schools have become a business model run by, there's a lot of businessmen that have got themselves involved in the education space in order to turn profit. And this shouldn't be the case. I firmly believe when it comes to education and healthcare, these activities should be non-profit, should be funded by the state, should be equal opportunities for all in education and healthcare. But unfortunately, that's not what it is. There is a large element of people running educational institutions where turning profit is more important than imparting learning, and this again is a very sad state of affairs. So we're very much involved in money. Of course, it takes a lot of money to run an institution like this. It's probably about a 1.5 crore annual budget. So we are engaged in fundraising, and we engage with a lot of partners for fundraising, be it corporates or grant-making foundations, foreign funders, local funders. But really the backbone of our fundraising is we have a child sponsorship program. So we aim to connect children with sponsors. The sponsor would make a monthly contribution towards the child's education. We're engaged somewhere with about 350 sponsors these days. Our ultimate aim is to have 3 sponsors per child. This would currently it would cover nearly 90% of the expenditure of the school. So this is something that has given us a distinct advantage at this time. During the pandemic, I've seen, read articles and seen on the news, the plight of private schools, especially a lot of low budget private schools that, parents might not pay the fee annually, they pay the fee monthly. And of course, if the child is not in school, they're not paying the fee. So the school's not getting the fees, the school's not paying the salaries. There's a lot of teachers that have been, unpaid, underpaid during this time of the pandemic. But because of our strong position in fundraising, that we're not reliant upon fees, we've managed to maintain a good level of incoming funds. We've managed to pay all of our staff 100% of their salary right from the start of the pandemic until the present day. And we aim to do that until such time that, everything turns back to normal. So that's been, just on a very kind of micro scale, or something that's happening right now that has put us in an advantageous position. So to make all of this happen, we employ about 80 members of staff. And I know, you're doing the quick calculation in your head, okay, 200 plus students, 80 members of staff sounds like a lot, but we need to remember some things. So first, we're running a dual curriculum. So we need 2 faculties of staff. So we've got 1 faculty of performing arts teachers, and then they're leaving, teaching, academic teachers are coming. So we've doubled up on the faculty of teachers to start with. We're a residential school. We have 8 hostels, 4 for boys, 4 for girls. There's around 25 students in each hostel, and we have 2 hostel wardens in each hostel. I've heard stories about some hostels somewhere, you've got hundreds of kids, and there's one warden who's supposed to somehow magically manage all of this. And it's not possible. So we look on a ratio, a maximum of 1 to 15 when it comes to pastoral care. But even that is, very challenging. 1 person taking care of 15, especially if they're in the younger group. So yeah, a lot of wardens are there. We're residential, so we need people working in the kitchen. We're a developing campus, and we're a campus that we like to leave a very minimal footprint on the land. So a lot of our buildings are, low cost, eco-friendly, with materials that are sourced locally. So I think a lot of people might describe them as huts, but they're low impact, eco-friendly. They do require a lot of maintenance, is the downside of that. So we have a maintenance team. We have an office team, of course. We need an accountant and a driver and a fundraiser and all of these things. So, this all adds up, and I think we're just slightly less than 80 members of staff right now. And then backing up this incredibly capable team is a team of volunteers. We have a volunteer program, which has been running since the inception of the school. We've probably welcomed more than 500 volunteers from more than 20, 25 countries around the world. I think we've covered every continent of the world apart from Antarctica. So this is something that, again, this is a benefiting both parties. This is something that is really great for the children, that they get to meet, young, dynamic people from around the world. They get to share experiences. They get to practice their spoken English. They can inquire with them. They're very curious. They want to know what life is like in their home, in their school, and all these things. And it broadens their horizon on the world. And then it's a very positive experience for the volunteers that come. We're probably 90% we welcome foreign volunteers, but we do also welcome Indian volunteers also. But this whole idea of volunteering and the gap year, and it's not something that is so much developed in India as it is in the West. It's very popular in the West to take a gap year and volunteer or travel or do something. So yeah, we've had this volunteer program running, and the volunteers are really just adding value to the existing structure. So we make sure that we don't have volunteers come removing employment opportunities from the local population. It's just about adding value to the existing structure. It's quite difficult for me to sum up, what is KSV in 20 minutes, and it's quite difficult also to do it in this virtual world without being face to face with everybody. And it's, you know, we always say about KSV when we're meeting people that, you know, we can tell you how it is and what it is and why we do it and all these things, but KSV is something to be felt. And the way to feel it is to come and visit, to come and see what we do, to really feel the essence of the place. And that's when you really get a full understanding. So I know it's difficult times these days, and when schools do reopen, or will be reopening under quite strict conditions, and you know we won't be welcoming visitors for some months. But certainly, let's hope in the middle to later part of 21 that we can once again get back to normal, welcome visitors. I'd love to welcome you all to KSV so we could really get a more in-depth understanding of what it is we do here. I think I'd love to take some questions.
Thank you, Adam. You did try to paint a picture of KSP through your words, and I can see the chat box where a lot of people are already showing interest in visiting your campus.
Good.
Having visited myself, I can only tell that your description is only maybe insufficient when compared to the feeling of being there itself. So I
Of
can
course.
only suggest that all of them do visit that place, spend some time, and see the kids actually being part of the learning activities there. So there are, as we move to the questions, there are a few quick questions from the audience. A couple of them connected to learning outcomes. I kind of clubbed them together. Uh, One of the questions was, uh, have you seen a positive impact on the learning outcomes because of an arts integrated curriculum? When you take the mainstream academics, because of having an arts integrated curriculum, have you seen any positive learning outcomes?
Well, overall, I would say yes, of course. At the same time, I myself don't have any direct experience to be able to weigh up one group against another to say, you know, I know there's been many studies have been where you've taken different study groups of, you know, a group of children in the 8th grade or the 5th grade and another group, and then you've measured, you know, through a series of metrics, you've measured their performance on language or mathematics. One group is purely doing academic studies, another group has been doing academic studies along with, it might be music, or another group might be visual arts. And, you know, I think most of the time, the groups that are, if not all the time, the groups that are involved in some kind of arts program, the academic performance is much greater. So, you know, one of the points that I failed to mention in my brief talk regarding learning outcomes was up until this year has been a very special year for all of us for many different reasons. But up until this year, you know, we've been very proud to say that we have had 100% pass rate in the SSLC examinations. That yes, we have had a couple of students here and there, you know, one or two here and there, failed one or two subjects here and there, but then in the supplementary exams, they've cleared those. And we've got each and every student, and I think it's somewhere in the region of now 170 students have been through the SSLC exam, all passed. 98% of them have gone on into college. And then again, 98% of those going to an undergraduate degree. I'll be happy in a second to share a couple of the success stories of KSV that is, you know, amazing transformation, amazing. So there's definitely a lot of positives in terms of learning outcome. And I'm very confident that a lot of it is related to the arts, you know, having access to music, having access to the arts integrated curriculum, it bolsters a child's confidence, it bolsters a child's self-esteem, it helps them with listening, it helps them with planning, it helps them with collaboration, it helps math skills, it acts as a stress relief. I remember reading some articles before about the, you know, the areas of the brain that we use for learning music, these are the same areas of the brain that are used in the study of language or the study of mathematics. So yeah, the brain is a muscle, just like the bicep, that we need to exercise, and the more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. So yes, I would say definitely there's a lot of positives in learning outcomes related to students studying an arts integrated curriculum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ramesh has a
Yeah,
question.
you spoke of generational poverty, and and one of the aspects of this school is to address that in terms of providing them integrated education in terms of both the academics as well as the cultural aspects of it. I just wanted to know what is the how do you identify students? Do students come to the school by themselves, or is there a program that that looks out for these students, picks them up, or what is the criteria? And also how do children, and do children do children have a choice in terms of what particular stream that they want to choose, be it within arts itself? So a couple of questions clubbed together.
So what the admission side of things is something that in the the time we've been operating has radically changed. Um, you know, the idea of KSV in itself is something a little bit radical. It's not too radical, but at the same time, it's not mainstream. And the fact that we're doing it in such a rural location, the fact that foreigners are involved in this at the very heart of it. So you can imagine, when we started, and we started with just a handful of children in a few very humble huts in the forest. And this was, situated between a couple of villages. And if you can, Kalkeri, the village of Kalkeri at that time, this is the end of the bus line. The bus from Kalkeri, it doesn't go anywhere. It comes to the village and then it goes back to Dharwad. Most of the people in Kalkeri had probably never met a foreigner before. So when some foreigners kind of land in their village and set up something that looks a bit like an ancient Gurukul, teaching Hindustani classical to young children from the nearby villages, it's something that people are not immediately understanding what is going on. And there's, of course, an element of mistrust also at the beginning. And we face that, and it's normal, But we didn't get too much involved in all of that, and we just let our actions speak for ourselves and build up this level of trust in the local community. But it meant at the beginning that, okay, yes, we had to go out and we had to find children for admission. So we were going out and finding, you might find kids that are grazing cattle and find out where they live and go and meet their parents and speak to them about the school and encourage them to send their children. So it was like this for a little bit. Then those children that were in KSV would go back to their villages for the holidays. Their neighbors, they could see some positive change, I guess, in these children. And then so, neighbors started to come. Cousins of these children started to come. So slowly, people started to come to us. And right at the beginning of the school, we were very open. It was pretty much the only criteria to come was that you had to be from socially, economically disadvantaged background. And you had to have, Kannada as a mother tongue in most cases. Not all of our children actually have Kannada as a mother tongue. But, to live in Karnataka. Then it got to the point probably 10 plus years ago where we were getting massive amounts of inquiry for admission, and it was taking up months and months of the year dealing with inquiries, giving application forms, interviews, and all this stuff. So at some point we had to kind of make a circle, and I think at the beginning we said 100 kilometers from the school. If you come inside the circle, you can apply for admission. Still, the inquiries were a lot. So we come down to 80, we came down to 60, we came down to 40. Now we're 30 kilometers. So I don't know if we come anymore, But we get a couple of hundred applications, 100, 200 applications now a year, which is manageable, but it's still a lot of applications for only 15 seats in the first standard. We have a policy of not taking students anywhere in between unless it's very exceptional circumstances. We might consider, but usually we like to just take students in the first standard and take them as a homogeneous group from the first all the way through to the 10th. Thankfully, I have been involved in the admission in the past, but thankfully I'm not too much involved with it these days because it is a very tiring process, and it's not a very thankful process because, you actually need to say no to many more people than you say yes. So it's quite challenging, but that's pretty much the how it's standing. We have an application form for admission. I would say the majority of the parents that come have been through school, but they struggle with the form. They've maybe not been through school and they're illiterate and not able to deal with the form. So we tend to have a member of staff fill up the form with the parents. And this serves as a bit of an informal interview process. So once all the forms have been filled and collected, we would go through them. We'd narrow it down to around 40. And those 40 students, we invite them to the campus with their parents. They would go around various stages in the day. So we check cognitive ability and, what basics do they know in education? Do they know their alphabets and basic arithmetic and some things like this? We check to see if it's very difficult to evaluate a child at 6 years old about their ability in the arts. But, we see can you sing a song? Do you know any folk music? Maybe they've learned to play an instrument. Maybe their father or mother is playing an instrument. So we check that. We check their health, and then there's an administration section. Once this has been done, we narrow that down again to around 2025. We would then go with a team of 2-3 members of staff over a period of a couple of weeks, and we visit the children and the parents in their home context. And it's a chance to have more in-depth discussion with the parents to find out what are their aspirations for their children, what level of commitment are they ready for their children in terms of education. Once this has been completed, we'd then choose our final 15 for the first standard, and we'd have 3 to 5 on a waiting list. So the process has become quite refined over the years. I'm sure there's still a bit more refinement to do, but yeah. And your second question was regarding the choice of the students. Do they have any choice? And yes, they do have choice when it comes to the performing arts, what they can choose to do. Part of the elementary classes in the first 4 years is some exposure through, whether they're just visiting the tabla class, the sitar class, the dance class, they're seeing their older classmates, the older students of the school performing in programs, and, they get an idea about what's what. There's some little workshops for them. So by the time they get to the 5th standard, most of them have quite an idea about what they'd like to do, so they can choose the 2 disciplines of the performing arts. And I think it's probably close to 90% of the students, they stick with what they chose. There are a couple of butterflies that, fly from flower to flower, and until they really find out what it is that they're suited to and what it is they start to succeed at. But most of them, they stick with the choice that they chose initially.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One quick question from one of our audience. What if a student is not really keen about music?
That's quite challenging. So it does happen. What we found in that regard, because we offer theatre and drama and dance also. So dance is 99% populated by the girl students, and boys are welcome to join. Some do, but it's not so popular amongst the boys. And then drama is there. So we find that most of the students that are maybe not so much musically inclined, they gravitate towards the dance, they gravitate towards the drama. And then something that we introduced, I think 2 years ago, we started with just the 10th standard. So we gave them the option of when they entered the 10th standard, if they would like to drop the performing arts. So for instance, if you're having a child and they know that they want to get into science, they want to study to be an architect or an engineer, or they want to get into teaching or whatever it might be, and they know that they're not really going to carry on the performing arts in their higher education and in their adult life, there's little point putting a lot of energy into that if it's you're just going to drop that in 1 year. It's maybe better to focus more on your academic subjects at this stage. And then last year we extended that to the 9th standard also. So that option is there, but there's not too many that choose that actually. There's just a very small minority that choose that. But I think in an ideal world, I would extend that even further. I would, after the 8th standard, give students the opportunity. Would you like to drop maths? Would you like to drop science? Because there's a lot of focus on science, but if you're going into a career that is not so much involving maths and science at a high level, by the time you get to the 8th standard, you've already learned all of the necessary concepts in maths and science that are going to help you in your everyday life. You don't necessarily need to get too much involved deeply in formulas and trigonometry and all these things. So it really depends on what your career path is going to be. If you're getting into engineering and architecture, then sure, you need to continue in these lines. But I would love to see a bit more freedom in terms of being able to chop and change and choose different modules for your education. That I think would be a better solution.
Thank you. We have quite a few questions. I'm not sure if we will be able to take up all the questions, but a couple of them to kind of quickly move to the last section. One was, as you explained, the system which you follow at KSV. We see that it kind of places your school at loggerheads with you have an ancient system of learning, which is kind of inquiry driven. And there is a modern lecture mode of a classroom in the regular academics. So how does that conflict play out in the kid's mind, or do you have some mechanism to make the best of both worlds, sort of a thing? The second one is the system also places you at loggerheads with a formal schooling system, or maybe the education department. So how would you tackle that?
I'm not sure that conflict is the right word, especially when you talk about the difference in learnings or teaching style of the performing arts against the more kind of modern classroom environment. Sure, there's a difference, but I don't notice any conflict there whatsoever. It seems that the children are just very easily flow between the two systems. So we've maybe faced a little bit of conflict when it comes in terms with the teaching staff itself, because we have some ideas that we'd like to create a music syllabus, and we'd like to write all the notation of all the ragas, and create a structure for this, a bit like you have a structure for any other subject. But of course, many of the musicians coming from a very traditional background are having this system of this is an oral knowledge passed on from guru to shisha, and so creating the structure is maybe something that is there, but it's something that is to put it actually into a syllabus is something a little alien for them. But apart from that, the students themselves, from moving from one environment to the other, they do it at ease. So I don't see any conflict or any issue there. With regards to the education department, it's a frustration that we seem to it's a sad fact that everything is becoming standardized. So this makes it quite challenging for people that like to think outside the box. Luckily, you know, we've had very, very positive and very good relations with all of the education department staff. They're very positive about what they see in our school. They're positive about the results that they see in our school, whether it's, you know, just something like the Pratibha Karanji events, or it's the SLC examinations. You know, there's definitely a lot of positivity coming out of our school, and a lot of positive results and a lot of positive social change. I think this counts for a lot. So we're somehow at the moment we're managing to squeeze ourselves into the box. I don't know how that's going to play out in the future, but we hope that there's still room for schools like KSV, you know, that like to do things maybe a little bit differently. We hope that there's room for families who want to do things a little bit differently. They want to homeschool their children. I know there's different parts of the country. There's a lot of friction about this. So a lot more freedom would be appreciated, I think, by schools, by parents, by students, from the education department.
Thank you, Adam. Uh, just one last question before we move to the closing remarks. Uh, you made a strong case for free schooling, and I do see the logic of what you're saying. And I also, accept the fact that governments need to not just subsidize but also perhaps offer public education for public good. But the question I had is, have you ever experienced or have you ever felt that, being taken for granted, given that a lot of that the education is given free? And two, do you also think that sometimes the value of what you offer does not get translated in the minds of people who you are transacting with or transacting for, in that sense?
Yes, you are exactly right, and you have hit the nail on the head. It is one of the challenges that we've been facing, is this, you know, attachment of value because everything is just handed out. So it's something we're constantly working on. But yeah, if you're not careful, you can kind of breed a generation that have this feeling of entitlement, that just feel like everything should fall into place for them, when, you know, this is not the reality of the world, that everything requires hard work and effort if you want to achieve anything. So this needs to be these kind of values, you know, need to be transmitted to the students. And the very essence of KSV is something that is very value driven. So we try to impart the values to the students. You know, we talk about integrity and gratitude and compassion and empathy and creativity and, you know, achievement, many things. And there's a lot of different actions going on where we're reinforcing these values with the students, you know, outside the classroom and inside the classroom. And I feel a lot of it is, it's had a very positive impact on them. Of course, it's a mixed bag that, you know, not all students feel like that, and it's going to take, you know, until they get into their kind of early adult life and they reflect on things a little bit more, that they'll look back and realize. And it's some that can realize that at a younger age. But yes, it is one of the challenges that we do face. And yes, maybe there needs to be some cost attributed to it in order to generate value. But at the same time, what happens if the people concerned are unable to make that cost? it's you know, you have to weigh up a lot of things, right? It's quite challenging.
Thank you. I think Praveen
Thank
had
you,
a
Adam.
question.
One last question before we move to the closing remarks from your end.
Yes.
How did Adam land up at KSV?
Oh, have we got time for this?
Maybe 30 seconds.
Oh, it's a long story, but you know, before I got involved in this institution, I do not have a background in education. I have a background in horticultural science, things more along this lines. Um, I was never really searching for the, you know, what I'm doing now is not something that I set about looking for exactly. Um, I think if I'm very honest, I was probably more running away from something. And it was this whole, you know, Western kind of lifestyle that I find to be very extravagant and slightly decadent, and um, uh, it wasn't generating value, and it didn't seem to put value in the right places. That, you know, everybody running around after money, everybody very much concerned about material things, about amassing wealth and having a bigger house and a bigger car, and, you know, all of this stuff, keeping up with the neighbors, keeping up with the family members, and, you know, running around 9 to 5 like a hamster in the wheel, you know, doing this thing, generating value for somebody else, a company shareholders, and, you know, the board members of the company, coming away with your salary at the end of the month, uh, uh, paying the bills, and repeat. And it just seemed that, you know, there has to be more to life than this. So I was really just looking for something that, on a personal level, could generate more value for myself, and if at the same time I could generate value for other people, then that's a win-win situation. So, and it was really by chance that I came across, you know, this organization in the infancy when it just started. You know, I should make it clear that I'm not one of the founders of the organization, even though I've been deeply involved with the place for many years. Um, if I'm honest, again, I don't know if I would myself have had the courage to start something like this. So I'm very grateful to the founders, who I consider to be, you know, close friends and mentors and colleagues. There's Mr. Matthew Fortier, his wife Agat Fortier, along with Ustad Hamid Khan from Darwa, the founders of the institution. And yeah, it was kind of just by chance, through friends of friends, that I came across them. And I just, it was really infectious, this positivity that everybody, you know, you had people from all walks of life, different countries, different ages, different classes, all coming together in order to generate some value and generate positive good. And it was really something that was quite infectious. And I think I just fell in love with the idea and the project way back then. So, in a very condensed format, that's how I'm here.
Thank you, Adam. So we'll now move to your closing remarks, maybe a couple of minutes on having implemented the arts integrated curriculum at KSV for about 18 years now. What are your big takeaways? What are the lessons that you have learned?
Well, I think that the big takeaways that I can talk about is, it has to be the success of the students. It has to be that has to be the most exciting part that you're able to witness, you know, that you can see children and the background that they're from. You can see that what is, you know, without the intervention of KSV, what is the opportunity for that child to go to this local government school where you have, you know, one teacher managing 3, 4 standards of children and trying to multitask, and, you know, I can't even imagine such circumstances. And then knowing that, you know, the intervention that has been there from KSV, seeing how the children have embraced that, seeing their love for learning. This is something that, again, that is quite a contrast to the West, that I notice, is this, you know, the children are very grateful for the opportunities that they have, and many of them, the majority of them, they really embrace that. So seeing that happen, and then, you know, seeing them get into college, seeing them get into university, and now seeing them getting into the employment market. You know, we have, I can mention a couple of examples very briefly. I can remember vividly one time I visited one village, a small Lambani Tanda in Karnataka, staying, you know, sleeping outside the family's house, sharing my bed with the goats, and, you know, seeing the kind of just it was like a forgotten land in some way. You know, the development is just kind of like skipped by this place, and it was really like stepping back in time. Um, and I got one of the students from there. She's completed a master's of science, majoring in geology. She married a doctor. We have another girl from similar circumstances, completed a Bachelor of Education, is now doing an MA English. The sister now is also doing a Bachelor of Education. We have one boy, he's completed his engineering degree and has now secured employment with, I forget the name of the company, is one of the leading cement manufacturers in the company, in the country. We had another student who completed BCom, B Music, and got selected into the Indian Navy under the music quota. And now there's another student just completed his M Music who wants to follow in the footsteps and also try for the Navy. There's so many, you know, these kind of things are just, it's such a contrast to think about what they would have been doing. You know, there's every chance they might have succeeded anyway. But I feel that because of the lack of opportunity, that it just might not have been the case. So it's really great to see the children embrace these opportunities, get involved with the performing arts, the education, and to see their success. And I'm encouraged to see the, you know, the national education policy, the emphasis on arts that's there, that's laid out in the policy. I think that's a very positive step forward, that, you know, something like the arts, be it music, be it drama, be it visual arts, whatever, that it's not seen as like an extracurricular activity. That, you know, this needs to be much more integrated and become a part of, you know, the curriculum and be a part of the learning process, because there is a lot of validity in that. So it's very encouraging to see that. And yeah, through the student success, this is just telling me that KSV is a success, the model is successful, the whole idea of this arts integrated curriculum is a successful model that's been tried, it's been tested, and it's great if other individuals can step forward and you know, start initiatives similar to this in order to propagate these ideas and these values in different parts of the country.
Thank you, Adam. It was wonderful, and you did end on a great note. So before we move on to a formal vote of thanks by Dr. Rekha, I just would be launching a poll. It's been 13 lectures so far in the Guru Manthan. So I quickly request all of you to kind of share your feedback, which will help us plan for the future sessions as well. You will be able to see the poll on your screen now. Will be there for 30 seconds, and then we'll move to Dr. Rekha for her closing remarks. And as the poll is going on behalf of Adam, I would like to extend an invitation to all the audience to do find some time to visit KSV. And I think the greatest service to or support to KSV would be doing something very similar to KSV in our own schools, in our own settings, and see what we can do best for the children that we work with. Thank you, everyone. We can now move to closing remarks and vote of thanks by Dr. Rekha.
Thank you, Praveen. And thank you, Mr. Adam. Yeah, it was indeed a very nice briefing on the Kalkeri Sangeet Vidyalaya. I think for most of us who have not visited, I think except Praveen, Ramesh, and maybe few in the group, it was a quick imaginary campus tour for us. And I think we also had a meaningful overview and discussion on creative teaching and also how positive social change can happen through arts. I think we can now easily connect to Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore saying, when I see the universe through my songs, I recognize it and then I know it. Right? This is also the best answer on why art integration is necessary in the education. Well, on behalf of Vivekananda Institute for Leadership Development, I would like to once again thank Mr. Adam Woodward, Director of Kalkeri Sangeet Vidyalaya, for joining us today and giving us a lot of food for thought on how creative teaching can make a difference in a child's intellectual development. I think KVC is a model which we can replicate, especially what caught me is integrating technology and teaching technology with arts and also academic curriculum, as it is much important in today's world and all the more in this pandemic world where everything is happening online. Okay. So thanks to all the interested group of audience present here and thanking Kalkeri Sangeet Vidyalaya contributing to its best in bringing the awareness to our young citizen about the cultural heritage of our country. So thank you. And I think I'll hand it over back to Praveen for any quick announcements. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Rekha. Have a great weekend, everyone. Be safe. Yeah, I hope all of you maintain the social distancing while you explore the decorations outside. And next week we have another great speaker, Dr. Praveen Kumar, an IPS who is the secretary of the Telangana Social Welfare Residential Education Society. Just to give a quick background of him, he basically heads the society which runs over 200 schools for the underprivileged in the state of Telangana. And several of the students from those schools have actually gone places. One of the girls from one of the schools in Telangana has gone on to scale the Mount Everest. She was the youngest girl ever to do it. Then every year from the government schools that they run, several students have been able to consistently crack the NEETs and the JEEs and so on. So if we are able to achieve quality at scale, I think Dr. Praveen actually demonstrates that it is also possible. So it would be great to listen to him. So do join us next week and do keep sharing in your questions, feedback, help us plan better for the future sessions as well. Thank you. Have a great weekend.